and get active. Great. So we are recording. Okay, so great. Welcome, 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 welcome to the Royal Couch here. My name is King, and I have another amazing, amazing, amazing guest today. A beautiful queen that is here. And you know how we do it here on the Royal Couch. We like to get to know the person behind the name. I feel like a lot of people are so caught up in these names, especially with social media and, you know, what influencers are and everything like that, that people forget that there's a person behind that name. And it takes the person to develop the name that we all, you know, love today. So I want to start off by saying that this is an unbiased conversation here at the Royal Couch. Again, we like to get to know the person behind the name. I want to do this interview per se, particularly with you, Rachel, because after reading your story, after seeing and reading your story, I've never felt so connected with someone in the aspect of my life as a racial in a racial format, right? You know, I watch TV. We all grew up watching TV and trying to kind of relate to the people that we've seen on TV, whatever the case may be. And of course, I've seen myself as far as my complexion and things like of that nature. But I really didn't see myself as who I was inside, right? And who I identified with, right? So as a Hispanic man, Puerto Rican descent, but I identify as an African American, or as you know, societal says today, black man. And although I do look the part, you know what I mean, I'm full-blooded Puerto Rican, right? And but I'm reminded that I look black and that I am, or that I'm not Puerto Rican or not felt Puerto Rican through my family, you know, and do subtle remarks and statements, you know, since I was a child. So honestly, this led me more into like feeling not so me, right? Trying to understand, trying to place myself where I fit in. You know, I'm not black enough for the blacks. I'm not Puerto Rican enough for the Puerto Ricans. Like, where do I fit in, whatever the case may be? So I want to have this, you know, this mature conversation with you, and you know, be able to kind of dissect that a little bit as far as from myself and you know, for you, if that makes any sense.
For sure.
Yeah. So my first question would be for you is, as time passes, we all get a better understanding of who we are and where we're going. What can you say about you and what you have learned through your experience and through your process?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, kind of like what you just talked about a little bit with your own identity and coming to know who you are on the inside, and also how others are going to perceive you as you interact in the world. I really have come to learn that it's so important to know someone's whole story, like not just clickbait stuff and not just surface level stuff, but really to know the whole story. And so I've shared my whole story in my book, of course, which, you know, some people read, some people don't, but it's out there. And in my book, I talk about the hardships of my upbringing. You know, I was born in a teepee on the side of a mountain, really bizarre kind of childhood in Montana. And you know, you just said like we all grow up watching TV. I didn't grow up with a TV. So, yeah, like it was banned from our household because it was considered a secular influence. So I was raised in a very
Wow.
religious situation. But anyway, you know, my book talks about all of that, like just how I lived inside of myself and kept my power, my strength, and my resilience kind of, you know, within my own spirit, and didn't let that be broken even through a lot of corporal punishment and abuse during my childhood, and just kind of like learned how to stay strong on the inside and to be really clear on my core values and who I am whether or not it matches what my family is or what my, other people around me are doing. I had to, at a very young age, be really sure about who I am and why I'm here. And that really kept me going and, protected me in a sense from being, damaged internally. And so I kind of just learned to support myself and
Right.
keep that core really strong. So I've always been a fighter for freedom and justice and self-determination. And again, I share that in my book. I think recently, probably in the last 8 years, since the world has come to know my name, I've learned that, it's important to not just advocate for others, but also to, again, pull into ourselves and have that self-love and that self-care.
It's
And in
important.
probably about the 20 years of my civil rights work, I kind of got a little bit away from that as a focus. I kind of let my health slip a little bit. I wasn't as focused on me because I just felt like there's so many life and death issues with human rights in the world that, how can I afford the luxury of going to the gym or something, right? So
Right, right,
like you
right,
kind of
right.
get caught up in like, this is, state of emergency for our kids and people are being killed by the police and this and that, so I was like so caught up in advocacy work, which was not a bad thing, but just in 2015, it was a reminder that I also need to show up for me
That's
and,
very important.
keep my health going. And, that's kind of the basis for, of course, showing up for your kids. Like as a mother, you have to take care of yourself too. So
No, you
that's just
definitely do.
been a
Because
lesson.
without you, you can't do much. As all the hard work and advocating for you, it's the airplane
Right.
mode where you have to put the mask over yourself before you can put
Right.
it on next anybody else. So I
Yeah.
advocate for that as well. Self-care, self-love, self-reassurance, all that is very important in spaces, especially in advocacy, because you give out so much energy
Right.
and you need
Yeah.
time to replenish that energy for yourself for
Right.
in cases of, like you said, that you went through for the last 8 years.
Yeah, and just even if somebody doesn't go through some sort of a media, craziness situation, I think even just burnout happens to a lot of people in
Of course,
nonprofit
yes.
work and advocacy work. We can kind of get, so caught up in the causes that we forget that, just, what we eat and getting some movement in and those kind of things are also that homeostasis that really just keeps us balanced and able to show up. I used to actually think that when they do that little put your oxygen mask on first, before I thought that was just complete BS. When I first wrote an airplane, I
Right,
was
right,
just
right.
like, no, I'm going to put the oxygen mask on the kid. Are you, like, are you joking me? Like, it's going to go on the child first, not me. Like, who does that?
No,
What mother puts their
it
oxygen mask
logically, when
on
you first think
first?
about it, that makes sense. No, definitely.
No, it does make sense now, but you know what I mean? Like your instinct is just to like show up for the whoever's in the greatest need in that moment. I think that that's kind of natural and but there's a balance for sure. I think you could do both.
No, definitely, definitely. I definitely am someone that falls in that line where I do so much for so many other people and do very little for me, even as simple as resting. And people don't understand how much importance rest is and how much rest, can eliminate a lot of other sicknesses and diseases and different things
Right.
that may come down the line. You know what I mean? So I definitely, definitely understand where you're coming from as far as self-love. Um, when it comes with strength, right? Strength comes in many different forms. Where do you gain your strength from? What inspires you to keep going?
So, like I've mentioned, I really do have a resilient spirit, and that has been with me for my whole life. So I draw from that, and I also really draw a lot of strength from my three sons. They continue to keep me inspired to keep on living and to know that it's worth it. And, my kids, by the way, are ages 7, 21, and 28.
Mm.
So 3 boys, different stages of life, all amazing. But they really do keep me inspired and just remind me that, life is short, they grow up so fast. And I think even, I'm in my mid 40s right now, but even as an adult, like you can kind of just see like the time passing. And so, um, nothing lasts forever. And I think that's, like there's a gift in just knowing that it's a new day. Like a single day does not go forever. Like tomorrow the sun's gonna rise again. It's gonna be a different day, right? So you get to start over every day. And there's something that's kind of beautiful in that. And then also just knowing that, you know, we can heal from the pain of the past, and we can regroup and we can rebuild, and nothing's the end of the world except the end of the world. So those kind of things kind
I
of
love
are my
that.
mantras.
No, I love that. It's not the end of the world, because it's not the end of the world. No, that definitely. I love that, and I want to send my admiration to you and my love and compassion to you, because you raised 3 amazing boys that are doing amazing and continue to do amazing things even after the media phenomenon that went on. So, kudos to you and your strength to show your boys that, you can still press on even
Right.
in moments of darkness and struggle and stuff like that. So, I really admire you that, even with the lack of work, and you still pushed and you still made a way, and you don't understand that impacts the children in a whole nother way than just seeing you just fold. So, I mean, salute to you as a mother and as a queen for continuing to strive past your struggles for your kids. Because I seen that, and I see the love that your kids have for you. So, that's priceless, definitely.
Yeah.
Um,
Thank
and
you.
with the passion, and you spoke a little bit earlier about your advocacy work. With your passion with advocacy, what are ways that you stay connected? Because I do believe that's your calling. You have a way of gathering the masses, but to unite for good. To you've done amazing work. You know what I mean, in your tenure, as far as in the NAW, the NAACP, president. You've done amazing even afterwards, and before. So, like, what do you do to stay connected in your work now?
Yeah. So, some of the things that I've done since 2015 have not been maybe as public, or, haven't carried like a title with it like my work did before that point. But I always stay connected to advocacy work because it's really just where my heart is.
Right.
So, I went to Antigua and helped start an NGO there to reduce recidivism rates for young mothers and Black youth. I also went to South Africa, to Johannesburg, and supported a campaign for a non-racial South African society to push further against apartheid categories, where Khoisan people are, still affected by being categorized as under apartheid colored. And so, that group and that label, there's a saying like Khoisan forever, colored never. And, just kind of like advocating for tribal identity and not race identity in that country. I've also supported recently, there was a female candidate for presidency in South Africa, and I was part of helping out with that campaign. Unfortunately, there's a pretty strong patriarchy there, so it wasn't successful. But again, just I stay active in all of these ways. I just launched a podcast in January of this year, and it's called Peripheries, and you can find it on Spotify or Patreon. And there's there's so many voices that are not being heard, and I hear from people all over the world. So already the podcast has 25 different countries represented in the voices that are
Amazing.
contributing and listening. And I basically am sharing letters from people that write to me and share their stories of how, just like you said, like, this is my background and this is why my story resonates with you, because I too have an identity that's like a peripheral identity, that's like on the outside of something that would, you know, per se fit in a scripted box under the race
Right.
view. And so there's so many people, not just in America, but all over the world, who have that feeling of, there's like, where's the representation for me? Because yeah, there's, checklist groups of Black, Asian, Hispanic, white, whatever on, TV, or the first XYZ person to do this, that, or the other. But then, like, where's the person that's bi, tri, quad, like somewhere in between? And, like, where's that representation? And so, just that experience of being, like you said, like, not Black enough for this group, not Puerto Rican enough for that group, not white enough for this group, not, and you kind of just get like ping pong balled around. And that I named the podcast Peripheries just because there's a saying actually in South Africa that, when somebody feels left out, they say, make the circle bigger. If somebody feels on the edge of the circle, it's like,
Make it
make the
bigger,
circle
right?
bigger so that they're then in the center, right? And so, like, people who feel on the periphery or on the margins right now, maybe in 20 years are going to be in the center and, the majority. And so anyway, I think all of those voices are so critical. And so I share those stories on my podcast, and then I kind of respond to them as well. And I don't think those stories are being shared anywhere else. And so I think that the podcast is a platform for advocacy in that way. I've also, something that probably not hardly anybody knows about, because I've kept it really quiet, but for this whole last school year, I've been the garden coordinator for an elementary school and teaching
Oh,
kids every
cool.
week to how to grow their own food.
That's
And
amazing.
something that I talk about in my book is just learning to live off the land, because we were so poor growing up that we didn't have money for groceries, and so we grew all our own food off the side of the mountain. And so I still have those skills, and am able to pass those on to kids. And it's just, it's very heartwarming to just see the smiles on their face. Literally, these kids run to the garden every Tuesday and are like, do we get to taste some more vegetables? Like, they're so
Oh,
excited.
wow.
And,
That's
it's
amazing,
like,
because you're creating new palettes for these new kids.
right. Well, and it's kind of like, some of these kids are like, I've never tasted lettuce before, or whatever it is, radishes
Wow.
and kohlrabi. And we just harvested snow peas. We had this huge, like, 3 different classes harvested 4 huge bowls of snow peas in one day. So it's like there's food being produced, and the kids are excited about it like it's Halloween, like they're gonna go get some candy, but it's actually vegetables. And so
That
it's just kind of like, it's just, like, building those healthy things, kind of instilling some of that at a young age. I think it's important, and it doesn't maybe seem like a big deal for advocacy, but I also, it's also kind of near and dear to my heart, because the garden space, it's like 21 plots, it's a big garden space, is one of the reasons why I wanted to enroll my son in that. It's a public school, but in that school, why we moved to this zip code, just so he could go to school there, because he has autism and is nonverbal, and that the garden space is actually like a sensory break opportunity for kids. So
wow, yeah.
if they're in class and they are feeling overwhelmed or whatever, they can just, like, leave the classroom with their aide and go take a walk in the garden as a sensory break. And I mean, like, how beautiful is that, to just be able to step out into nature for a little bit and regroup.
And regroup, right?
Yeah.
That like we talked about earlier, kind of regaining your energy and kind of setting it, grounding your energy right back
Right.
to yourself. That's
Yeah.
amazing. And you know what else I hear about this too? Because what I like to dig deep. And even
Mhm.
what you just explaining about what you grasped out of your childhood because you didn't have the means to, have a lot. So you had to live off the ground. It's so amazing how you can take your struggles because you didn't have the best childhood, from your story
No.
that we read, not feeling so secure, not feeling wanted. But for you to still be able to take the great things and the things that you did learn and be able to bring it up to now and kind of make a joy out
Mhm.
of stuff that a lot of other people will curl in a corner and cry about. You know what I'm saying? And make it their struggle. You actually make it, your stepping stone to step up and to help. I think that is such a beautiful thing. And this is why I say it is deeper than just Rachel, the name that we all know. You know what I mean? And
Right.
it's more or less the person that you are. And the person that I'm getting out of this is the resilience, is the strong nature of being, you know what? I'm not gonna let that behind me, deter me from what I have in front of me.
Right.
And that is beautiful. And that is so rare to see. And I believe it because I see it within you. You know what I'm saying? So I thank you for that because that's inspiring and motivating by
Mhm.
far. To me, the most out of this whole story is the fact that you can take such a struggle with your media, with your childhood, and then turn it around and flip it for good, even in the midst of adversity. That's where real paradise is, man. That is where
Yeah.
real
Well,
paradise is.
you
That's
got
that's a
to keep on going,
that's a
and
beautiful thing.
I actually named Langston after Langston Hughes, as probably people can guess, but because I read his mother to son poem when I was pregnant, kind of reread that poem, and just that sense. What resonated with me is, he's saying like, you got to keep climbing the stairs. I didn't sit down. So, the mother is saying to the son, I should say in the poem, like, I didn't sit down. So you guys, you got to keep going too. And that's really the lesson that I want to give my kids is no matter the hardship, no matter the obstacle, look at your mindset, like you can say like, oh, I have to do this, like it sucks, or you can say I get to do this because there are people that don't get to do this. And there's kind of like, not that it's easy to change your mindset in a moment, but in the trajectory of your life to kind of pick yourself up and keep going. And
Yes.
I think that we can all, do that because pain is universal. Like pain is just being human, is to experience pain at some point. Some people have more privilege than others do, but when we kind of face hardships and go through challenges, I think, yeah, for sure, like just to remember that it's not over yet. And the beautiful and sometimes scary thing is that we don't know what's around the corner, but it could be something really good. So we've got to be ready.
Yeah, risk is not always bad. It could be good risk at the end of that corner as well. I mean, around that corner as well. So yeah, people forget that. And talking about people, right, around your life, because you do have such loved ones. If the people around you love and accept you, why do you think that it's so hard for the majority of the world to? Like, why do you feel like your story is so hard for people to grasp or understand when the people around you? Because to me, if I look at someone and I'm trying to, let's say, judge, which I'm not, but let's say I am like the majority trying to judge, I would try to see, okay, who's around her and how do they feel around her? And it seems like you have nothing but love and acceptance around you. So why do you feel like it's hard for the rest of the world to give you that same?
Well, I agree with you that, yeah, the love around me is real. And that's, like I said, it's my strength. It's what keeps me inspired. The love of my sons, love of close friends. Um, but I think that like the main thing is that people just don't know who I am. A lot of people just have heard sound bites or have heard a lot of media info, clickbait, um, tabloid stuff that would make them villainize me. And so they kind of like jumped on that train and they've kind of preset their conclusion without actually discovering who this person is. So that, yeah, it sucks that that's how I was introduced to the world in 2015, to a lot of the world, right? But I do draw strength from the people around me that love and support me, and it's like as passionately as it seems that some people can really oppose me and want me to never succeed in anything, it's equally passionate that people love me and support me and want me to succeed in everything. And so it's kind of been a very interesting experience living at the cross section of those two very different views, where it's like love and hate. And it reminds me to keep my center, balanced, and to stay very clear about what my core values are, because I can't, let either side necessarily influence me to change or be this or be that. It's like I just have to continue to be me and to continue to show up and try to evolve into my best self, because people's opinions are going to change. And I truly believe that if somebody gets to know me, gets to know, some, like you said, the person behind the name of most of the stories that are out there, like, you kind of have a different perspective, right? So
I agree.
I do hope that, maybe people will get to know more about my advocacy work. People will maybe look up my artwork and,
Which is
find
beautiful,
something
by the
there
way.
that, thank you. Yeah. And like you said, look to my friends and my sons and, see what they're doing, because if people want to, cut me down or prevent me from certain opportunities in life, it's like, well, they better not prevent my sons. You know what I mean?
No,
Like
yeah,
any
definitely, yeah.
opportunity that I don't have, it's like my sons need to have those opportunities. So like I'm always there to, make a way for them. And like my middle son right now is in Rome. He was just texting me. He's at the Coliseum today. So he's on spring break. He's doing a semester in London, but he like visited Barcelona and Rome and Amsterdam and Paris, like over his spring break. I've never gotten to do that, like it's so, I don't need to do that either. I just have joy knowing that my kids get to do things that I didn't get to
Yeah,
do.
right. That's what
And
it's about, right? Making sure
yeah,
that
like
they
that's like
crossed a mile that you couldn't.
truly, yeah, like I don't really feel the need to go on some exotic vacation and see all these things. No, I'm good, like raising my youngest and doing what I'm doing. In fact, I was talking to somebody recently and I'm like, literally
Did I lose you?
for like vacation. Like I've never actually taken a trip for just a vacation or recreational purpose. Every time I've traveled internationally, it's been for some cause or, with some kind of work purpose in mind. So, and that's just who I am. Like I'm just more of a serious person. I like to have a purpose behind what I'm doing, and that's what gives me joy. So
Well, it comes off authentic. Like you come off authentic, and I feel like that's why you have to have that do love and support and respect you, because we can see that it's genuine and you are just being who you are. And I can't, who can be mad at that, because I want to be accepted for who I am, so I can only accept you for who you are. So I wanted to know your thoughts on civil justice in today's climate. What are some ways you think we can help matters in today? Because I feel like we kind of step forward once, but then kind of move back 10 spaces, and you know what I mean. So like every time we kind of feel like we have something going, something else is going on. So how do you feel about civil justice in today's climate?
yeah, so I feel like right now what's happening is there's a lot of forward motion for window dressing, what I call window
Mm,
dressing. Like it's trendy to have some type of diversity on the face of a corporation, a politician's, group and but I don't think that we're moving forward in all ways as far as like the core of civil rights and social justice. I think we're kind of forgetting some of that deeper work, or if we're not forgetting it, it's just like kind of getting swept under the carpet because, the institutions don't want to be, don't want to deinstitutionalize racism, don't want to deinstitutionalize injustice. The system wants to keep going as it is. So if we can just kind of put a facade on it that looks a little better, then we can kind of keep all of the power structure the same. And I think that's what, to me, that's kind of the danger right now. And so I think some things that people can do, of course, sharing posts and information, right? Awareness is important for sure. And like your platform, you do that. I think that's like step one. Like that needs to keep happening, is to share information and awareness and education. But we also need to add another layer to that, to act, to not just post, but also to call your legislators, your congressmen. Like recently, I was part of getting the Crown Act passed here in Arizona with the governor. And, like some people say, well, politicians are just corrupt and this and that, and we don't have to intersect with that. But laws do matter. We've seen
Yes,
that with, Supreme Court rulings that have affected state laws everywhere when it comes to abortion, when it comes to the Crown Act. That's something that states are considering passing or not. And so if you reach out, we want to get all 50 states on board to end hair discrimination. This has been centuries of hair discrimination. We need to just end that. Like, that's kind of like, we shouldn't even honestly have to work to end that right now. Like, it's just like, it's
pretty ridiculous. Yeah.
But there are some pretty ridiculous things out there that are just quietly persisting, right? And that racism, on multiple levels, and sexism and homophobia and a whole lot of other stuff is going to like quietly persist if it's not addressed in every single industry and all aspects and all layers. So I think that's important, but it's also important to, so like maybe your gift is organizing, and maybe you're a marketer. Like you could go crazy with organizing a campaign to get 100, 200 people, whatever, to call their senators and get a bill passed. You could also, maybe that's not your thing, but you like working interpersonally on the same issue of the Crown Act. For example, I had a hair client who actually came to me. She was 12 years old. She came to me straight from the hospital after being released. She had attempted suicide and was released from the hospital, came straight to my house to get her hair done. And she had, self-esteem issues. And one of our mutual friends, her mom's mutual friend with me, like recommended that she come get her hair done because that would help this young girl. And so just like talking to her and uplifting her spirit and braiding her hair and the joy that she had on her face when she left, and like just nurturing that kind of mentoring relationship in the months and years that followed, like that's also something you can do. Like that's an equally valid act to getting a governor to sign legislation, right? To intervene and to help someone with their actual hair. And like that also deals with hair discrimination, but in a right. different way. So my thing is, like, everybody should use whatever talents, whatever skills, whatever means you have, like use that for good. Get involved in a cause that you care about. Be specific, be strategic. If we're trying to do everything, we're going to probably be doing nothing. So pick a cause, break it down into like monthly goals, annual goals. Like, what do you want to accomplish? and then go target and attack that. I think that's like the best way to really, do advocacy work or activism, because then you can measure your progress and say, hey, I changed one life in this way, or hey, we got this act, or this bill to be signed. Then you don't feel hopeless, like you don't feel demoralized, like you can't do anything, you can't ever
Right,
fix
right.
anything, because you're actually measuring what you are doing and what you
Either okay. I love that, and I hope the people, when they watch this later, they're gonna be taking some notes and stuff like that, because there's a lot of people that I feel like want to do the advocacy work but don't know how to, or don't know the first steps to, and thinking that a post is, and don't get me wrong, posting is the first step, like you just said, you said, but it is taking the initiative to go more and doing the action behind the post. And it's not just about recognition, but about making change, and at least the motion in making change, because at least even if you didn't get that bill passed or that law passed,
mm-hmm.
you're resonating some noise in the community, and that's what counts, to make sure that at least our voices is being heard. And you might not be able to get it passed this time, but that doesn't mean we can't get it passed next time.
That's right. That's right.
No, definitely.
Everything, it's like that bucket of water, right? Every raindrop counts. Like,
every raindrop counts.
The one thing that you can make sure that is never going to make a difference is this: if you sit there and do nothing. So like, don't do not like anything that you do is going to contribute and is going to help. So I think that that's, something to hold on to as well.
I love that. I love that. So with all the work that you've done for the community, which I know is near and dear to your heart, but can you tell me a moment that probably sticks out to you the most out of like all the years that I know it's past 30 years now, but you was 25 years as president, different things like that. Like what are all, what is one thing that sticks out to you the most?
Yeah, so I would kind of, I don't know, maybe like just say they're probably top three. There's so many things. There's so many memories.
I can imagine.
So one of the top three would be when I was a professor at Eastern Washington University. I taught 15 different college courses, but over the course of my teaching career, one of the courses was African American history, and we addressed the Brown versus Board of Education Supreme Court ruling, and just education disproportionalities and inequities. And instead of just like studying from a book, I always try to get my students active in the community as well, so they could kind of see how change works, like I just talked about with doing something beyond just awareness and beyond education, to put that in action. And so one of the things that I remember is we looked at a high school that was underfunded in the area, and that we isolated 12 different high school seniors that all were BIPOC and were not expected to graduate that year. And, these are seniors, and knowing, again, the disproportionalities, if you don't graduate, your risk is actually doubled, especially as a Black male, for incarceration. You also have there's kind of this domino effect of life chances and opportunities that are going to be closed, or kind of fall apart if you don't have at least that high school graduation in place. So we can increase the life chances and opportunities and outcomes for these 12 students by actually trying to see what we can do, as we being my class of college students. How can we actually get them to graduate on time? Is that even possible? Like, what are the obstacles? What are the roadblocks? And so my students actually mentored these high schoolers, and found, some of the teachers were preventing them from even having access to certain assignments, and to even, make up things. One kid's mom had taken off and left the state with all his textbooks in her car, and the teachers wouldn't help him get new textbooks. I mean, it was just like different things were happening, right? So 8 of those 12 kids graduated on time, and so that's something that, I'll always remember, because now, like, there are 8 people in the world that have opportunities that they didn't have, or they wouldn't have had,
They wouldn't have,
you
right?
know, potentially without my students getting involved. And so that's just one thing as a professor. I would also say that as a human rights activist, you mentioned the NAACP, and when I actually was elected to president, a lot of people don't know that that position is unpaid, right? And there's no application where you somehow check black or white. It's like you actually get nominated to be on the ballot by existing officers in the branch. So some of the officers in the branch had followed my human rights work when I was the director of the Human Rights Education Institute in North Idaho. And basically, they were impressed with the courage and the commitment that I had to counter the Aryan nations, the white supremacists in North Idaho. And they said, we want her to be president because our chapter
of your work, which it
yeah,
should be. Yeah,
right,
definitely.
because the chapter was in debt, and after 95 years in existence, could have had its charter revoked. And so when I stepped in as president, I turned that around, and we had enough excess money in the bank to move the office down to Main Street, right in with the legislators. We, basically expanded the executive committee to 8 different action committees in the community, and started showing up, doing things.
You started doing the work.
And so it was like, that stands out to me just because it's an example of how organization and collective action can really come together to rebuild something that, it existed for so long, but was on the brink of collapse just because it wasn't being organized properly or managed properly. And really just a lot of it comes down to energy, like activating and energizing the youth to get involved, and energizing professionals who are experts in whether it's economic development or healthcare or political representation, getting people to run for office. I mean, a lot of times we think of, first Black president, first Black vice president, this and that. But then it's like, what about your school board? What about
right?
the
Yeah,
city
no,
council?
definitely.
What about, because the city council is strategic on so many things that are going to affect you on a daily basis, and the school board is going to decide a lot of stuff that's going to affect your kids, curriculum and everything else. And then, the mayor elects or appoints the chief of police in a lot of cities. And so when we're talking about making change, something like police reform, that comes down to who you're going to elect as mayor, so that intersects with politics. We just have to kind of think strategically, like, are we going to have candidates running for office who are going to be appointing people who are going to have the right values and ethics for these positions and so on. So, I was really proud of the work with the NAACP in that chapter. And I guess the third thing that would stand out to me is my work at the Human Rights Education Institute in North Idaho. I started a young advocacy for human rights summer camp. And one of the things that the white supremacy group, the Aryan Nations, had done in North Idaho, they had their international headquarters there prior to the Human Rights Education Institute being formed, because that was formed out of the Aryan Nations headquarters going bankrupt. So it was like when they went bankrupt because they got sued by the Southern Poverty Law Center, and they bankrupted them. Then the community started the Human Rights Education Institute as a preventative medicine. Like, we want to have something that, is supporting human rights in this area so that we don't have white supremacy building into an international compound again in this region, right? So I was the director of HREI, and formed, the white supremacy group had these camps to train kids, like in white supremacy. So I started, before when they were in operation. So I started Human Rights Education Institute summer camps to train teenagers to be advocates for human rights. And I was really proud of the work that the kids did, because these are middle schoolers
Oh,
who
wow.
they have the time on their hands. They also have like zero responsibilities, no bills to pay. They don't have a job. It's like too young to get a job, but old enough to have access to a lot of information. So they could research, and, they each picked like an annual project, a year-long project of advocacy on either a local, national, or international topic. One student picked international healthcare, and actually ended up discovering, through research, finding out that there were kids in Mexico who needed heart surgeries that could not afford those, and were, dying because they couldn't afford the heart surgery, and raised enough money to get life-saving heart surgery for 6 kids
Oh,
that wouldn't
wow.
otherwise be living. So things like that, again, measurable results based on solid research and data. And then like this teenager, right? 13 years old, made a difference and like saved 6 lives.
No, and that impacts their lives in such a way to when they get older, it resonates and they do more good because you already kind of put that in their mind to be these kind of citizens and these kind of people to be able to get that. I feel like a lot of people, especially as kids, don't do much because we feel like we don't have the voice, or the people don't take us seriously enough to do it. So to
Right.
do something like that, especially on an international state, that's stamped and validated him to be seen, and allows him to even probably do even way more than 6
Right.
kids then. Imagine what he could be doing now.
Yeah, and that was a her actually, but yes,
Or
you're
her.
right. But and then there, like another one of the kids actually grew up in a neo-Nazi home, and like basically rebelled against his dad to even come to the camp, and was getting like, beatings for even like being in the camp. It was just like really kind of intense. Like he just was like, I don't want to be my dad, And so that was like more of a local level type of thing. But it's just like the hearts of the kids, like they want to make a difference. They want to be invested in change. And like you said, they need some tools, right? Somebody to kind of show up and guide and direct like the process. And so the Young Advocates for Human Rights Camp was definitely one of the top 3 things that I'll remember.
That's
Just
amazing.
sometimes I wonder like where all of those kids are now, and
I
how
could doing
much
amazing work, I'm
they've done.
sure.
Yeah, it's like
Doing amazing work.
they know that they can make a difference, right? And I think that's one of the biggest roadblocks to activism, is just the feeling of helplessness or hopelessness, because we feel like we're too small, we don't have enough money, we don't have enough, access. We're just, what can I do? What can anybody do? Nobody can do anything to solve these huge problems. But it's like when you break it down into something that has smaller pieces, it's like, okay, well, I can help 6 of those kids, or I can do, I can that one kid that came, that he, his dad was a neo-Nazi, like he ended up creating pamphlets that he would go door to door and just make sure that people knew the fallacies of white supremacy, like educated people, so that, trying to like make sure that more people had information and access to the truth about race. And I just think that, kids are brave and kids have
They
vision,
are.
and those kids are gonna, like everybody who's ruling the world right now is a kid at some point. So
No, definitely. It would, no, that definitely, and I feel like kids are the risk takers that are going to allow and think of the things that we as adults don't think about, because we are
Right.
so structured and already militant in the way that we think and stuff like that. So a lot of us feel like our voices aren't heard, so we stay with the program instead of
Right.
falling out of line to create the next program to make it better for our kids. And it's these kids that are stepping up. Is, we make fun of the Gen Z and talk about, they don't know how to use a Walkman or whatever the case may be. But it's these kids that are stepping up, that are making a lot of changes today, that are not accepting the things that we accepted
Right.
in our time, and are making stops and making changes to say, hey, no, that's not right. Hey, no, I'm not going to accept that. Hey, no, I am my own identity. I am my own gender. I am my own. These are these kids that are saying this stuff. And I think it's making it a more beautiful world than less. So,
Yeah. And that's where, that periphery is going to become the center. Like what our generation, what my generation thought was normal or acceptable is going to be so far from what the next generation, deems as normal. I grew up without a cell phone. I grew up without internet, and I grew up without a TV, which was, most people in my generation did have a TV. But it's like, for somebody who can come from that, and here I am on something that's like being recorded and streamed.
right.
I mean, like, we're on technology. So we can all adapt and evolve. And I think that, even the older generations can be inspired by the youth and can support them. So some of us, we have to work 9 to 5 or work in some form, right, to pay bills. But kids in middle school don't have to pay bills. They have, they have to go to school, but they have a lot of free time. So I feel like they can, they can use that free time for good.
No, and make change, definitely. Yeah. And I know you're a busy woman. I'm having such a great time here talking to you, having this discussion. I'm not going to keep you too much longer. I only got a couple left. But again, thank you for doing this. I did want to comment earlier on the you being nominated. I'm glad that you did touch on that topic, because I do see a lot of rhetoric of a lot of people, she's taking jobs and stuff like that. So I'm happy that you cleared that up, because I don't think a lot of people do know that it's not a paying job. It's not something that you applied for. It's not something that you lied about. It's not nothing. You were nominated because of the work ethic that you have shown us just through your work and your advocacy. And I think that's very important, because it shows that it has nothing to do with race, but everything to do with the motion of what I'm doing, right? It's putting the foot to the pavement and actually doing the work. And there's a lot of people that screaming, like you said earlier, posting, doing a lot of things for recognition, but not actually doing the action that it takes to, really make a change in this world. And with that, saying that, what does your future look like? If you can be specific on what 5 years from today would be, what would that be for you? Just hypothetically, or if it's something that is going to happen, whatever case may be. But if you can choose exactly what you will want to be 5 years from now, what would that be for you?
Well, I would say, like, if given the opportunity, I would definitely go back to teaching. Like, I would be a professor again. I would be in nonprofit management. But both of those things kind of require acceptance at a certain social level. And so if not given that opportunity, I'm definitely going to continue to find ways to support my sons and to advocate and to educate. And that may look, I don't know exactly how that's going to look in the next 5 years, but I have my podcast. Like I said, right now I'm doing the work with the kids and supporting civil rights action, like the Crown Act. I'll continue to do those kinds of things, right? And as best as I can, just as a person of one, just one person, right? But if I do have the opportunity to teach again, I would love to do that. I would also love to work in the nonprofit sector. And, maybe there'll be some intersectional opportunity with, like I said, my youngest son, Langston, has autism, and I know that there's a lot of disproportionality, especially for Black boys who have autism, as far as even like getting diagnosed at later ages and not getting as many early interventions. And so that can also affect outcomes. And I'd love to work on that issue as well. So, you know, and another thing I absolutely don't talk about much. I do hope that maybe in the next 5 years, I will maybe find love, because it's been, you know, the last 8 years hasn't had any of the, it's hard to know who to trust with this crazy, you know,
I
online
can
world. But
imagine.
it's not my top priority, but if that comes along,
But
I'm
we all
open
need
to it.
love.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's like it'd be nice to have a partner. Meanwhile, I'm just going to keep focusing though on self-care, and I have a lot of fitness goals. I have a
Are there
Hashimoto
prospects?
diagnosis. Nobody that's like captured my attention yet,
Okay.
but you know, I'm open. I'm just kind of, you know, saying like 5 years from now, I could see that happening.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely.
So yeah, but I'm gonna just keep showing up for my kids every day and continuing to grow and evolve. And so
That's
that's kind of,
beautiful.
yeah.
I love it. I love your energy. I love, honestly, it's like, and don't mean this by age or anything, but I just, you resonate like my auntie. Like, I just want to be like, okay, auntie, like, you know what I mean? Like, you have such a genuine kindred spirit to you that
Mm,
is so welcoming and is so authentic. And I really appreciate your energy that you spew out to this world. And despite all the negativity, how positive you are. I think that is so, to me, that is so, so important. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
when they say, you know, where paradise and joy and true happiness, I feel like that's where it relies at. When you can see, when you can still smile through the midst of adversity, that's
yeah.
really where God resides, you know. And that it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing, Miss Rachel. And for my last question, we talked about what would you like your future to be. What can we expect your immediate future to look like? You know, what does 2023 look like? You know, for the things that you can talk about, because I know as entertainers or as people that have contracts and different things, you can't talk about everything that's going on. But for what you can talk about, what does 2023 look like for you?
Yeah, so 2023 is I'm actually going to come out with a second season even within this year of my podcast. So the first season is all these letters from around the world that I've been sharing, and I'm going to actually start doing some interviews on that podcast. You know, I've really tried to create that safe space for people that are on the margins and on the periphery. So I'm going to actually, you know, start having some conversations, and I hope that I'm able to like really curate that and keep those voices protected, because I'm just very fiercely protective about people who, like you know, have come out and kind of said like, look, I don't really fit in here or there. And, you know, it's hard to even say that in the climate that we're
It
in. It's
is.
so polarizing, and you just know that somebody's going to attack you and go like, oh my God, I can't believe blah, 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 blah. You can already hear all the
I
objections, right?
can, yeah.
But just to know that there's somebody in Australia, somebody in Nigeria who's like listening and wondering like, is it worth living? And, you know, am I alone? And so like to keep those conversations going out there, to just let people know they're not alone and that they, you know, their voice matters. So the podcast is going to keep growing and evolving. I'm also going to keep creating my artwork, more of that in 2023. And truly, like, my main focus, I would say, is really showing up for Langston and helping him grow and develop so that he can be the most independent in his future that he can be. So I know that doesn't answer all your, you know, questions. There
No,
are some
it does.
projects, you know, some other projects that I'm thinking about and considering, but I kind of feel like the spring is a time of growth and transition. And so I haven't really landed on, you know, exactly what on the menu of like 5 different things that I might be focusing on
Okay.
next, other than the podcast and art and, of course, education advocacy work. So yeah, stay tuned. Watch my Instagram. You know, I'm always going to drop things on there if they happen. So,
I love it. I love it. Well, look, Miss Rachel Dolezal, like, I want to say this has been a tremendous time. I'm excited. I've been so excited about this interview for so long. You have no idea. Like, I have my radio show in the morning, and I've just been like, guys, I have a guest interview. You're not gonna believe it. This is gonna be so huge. I'm super excited to talk to you. And again, not just because of your name, but because I don't resonate with so many, and I reach out to a lot of people, and I wanted to reach out to you not only for your story, but because I related in a way that I didn't know that I was going to in viewing your story, right? And it's funny too, because as watching the documentary on Netflix, I was with a couple of friends, and of course, there's conversation happening in the midst of watching, but I'm really in my silent mind and just in thought and like in a trance, because it's like you sat me down and was like, okay, this is what it is. Block out all of that on the outside and just we're here. And I think, and that's why I'm going to listen to your podcast and going to, hopefully I could be maybe one of the voices on there to speak on my story, because I think there's so many people that did what I did watching that Netflix documentary, where you allowed us to zone in on who we were. And instead of it being a TV, it was almost like a mirror. And it sounds cliche. It sounds so, but it's so true, to where when you're discussing, this is just me. You're telling me this and you're telling me to do that. I don't know how else to be but this. You know what I mean? And I got teary-eyed then, because growing up, my family didn't understand. My friends didn't understand. No one understood. So I just grouped myself with what makes more sense.
Right.
And you know, you treated me like I was something. I felt like I was something else. So I just adapted to this. And now, it's not like I've been knew who I was, but now I kind of understand the person behind my own name, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And so with all of that being said, I really want to say thank you for having this conversation, for having this dialogue with me, because I think it's important that we got to know who you were, outside of what the taglines and the media line, headlines say and different things. And I really, 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 because I know you don't do many interviews. I know you don't go off, and I know there's a lot of trolls and a lot of people that do clickbait and say it's going to be one thing, but end up being something else. But I really, 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 really want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, not only for this interview, but also helping me with who I am.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for expressing that. And I appreciate that. I mean, I think sometimes people forget that we're not just a body, right? We're also a mind and a soul. And sometimes those things, like how we think and how we feel, are more powerful than necessarily what, our body shows up as. And I think that, people resonate with that and understand that, like, that we're a whole, we have a whole story. Everybody has a whole story. So thank you for sharing yours with me. And I'd love to have you on the podcast for sure.
No, definitely. Rachel. This has been a time. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
Yeah.
In this conversation.
I'm glad I wore my cardigan sweater so I could look like an auntie,
No, you don't look like an auntie. You look amazing, by the way. And again, thank you. I wish you nothing but the best. I hope you nothing but success, love, light, and acceptance. Honestly, my heart goes out to you and your family. And shout out to Langston, shout out to your other boys. I salute you in everything that you do. I'm a supporter of you, and I will be definitely looking out for all the things that you have to come.
Thank you so much.
Definitely. So again, thank you for coming on the Royal Couch. And if you have any final words,
just keep shining, shining a light on all the important issues out there with your gold microphone. Keep it going.
I don't know. Thank you so much. You have been such a light and a blessing. And until next time, guys, this is Rachel Dolezal, and you're watching the Royal Couch. Peace.